Hello guys, I am Kundan Kumar. In this video, I am going to explain AsyncTask in Android. So today's agendas are why we should learn AsyncTask. What is the AsyncTask? We will see generic type of AsyncTask. We will also understand the four methods of AsyncTask. At the end, we will see limitation of AsyncTask. So let us understand the problem statement. If using mobile application you are trying to store users details through the web services into your databases. To perform this task, we can use simple UI thread handler which can take only milliseconds and data may record it. In case to perform this task need a longer time may take several seconds, then Android OS may kill those threads and your application may crash. So, to send the task in background which can be com completed in several seconds, how to achieve this? To achieve this, we can use AsyncTask or executor. AsyncTask is a class where executor is an interface. So we are going to see in this video AsyncTask, so we'll talk about AsyncTask. What is the AsyncTask? AsyncTask stands for asynchronous task. It is defined by a computation that runs on a background thread and whose result is published on the UI thread. AsyncTask also receives three parameters called params, progress, and result. AsyncTask executes four methods. One is called onPreExecute, other one is called doInBackground, third one onProgressUpdate, and the fourth one onPostExecute. So let us understand the generic types of AsyncTask. So to implement AsyncTask, we need to create a subclass. Here example is my task. So my task is a subclass extending AsyncTask. And AsyncTask receives three generic types. First one called the params, second is progress, and third one is the result. Let us understand the params. Params is the type of parameter sent to the task upon execution. Progress is the type of the progress units published during the background computation. And result is the type of the result of the background computation. So once doInBackground method finish the computation, they return some resultant value that's come at this parameter. Let us understand AsyncTask four methods. When an async task is executed, the task goes through four steps. First one is onPreExecute, second one do in backgrounds, third one onProgressUpdate, and fourth one onPostExecute method. OnPreExecute is invoked on the user interface face thread before the task is executed. This step is normally used to set up the task, initializing variables, initializing object. For example, by showing a progress bar in the user interface. doInBackground, it receives params as a parameter. It is invoked on the background thread, not on UI thread. I repeat, it is invoked on background thread, not on UI thread. Immediately after onPreExecute finishes executing. So on completion of onPreExecute method, automatically doInBackground method is called. In this step is used to perform background computation that can take a long time. It can take a few seconds. doInBackground also invokes publish progress. So on the third one is called the onProgressUpdate. This method is invoked on UI thread, not in background. After a call to publish progress, the timing of this is not fixed and defined. This method is used to display any form of progress in the user interface while the background computation is still executing. In the sense, still the doInBackground computation is still going on, but on your interface of your app, the progress bar keep on updating like a 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, but still the process are going on in the background. So onProgressUpdates invoked on user interface on your screen, while doInBackground invokes on background, not on the user interface thread. Let us go in the fourth. onPostExecute is invoked also on UI thread after the background computation is finishes. This result of the background computation is passed to this step as a parameter. So these are the four methods that is executed to perform the task. So let us understand these four methods with an example. So you can look on your screen that we have an app. On launch of an app, they offers us to play some music or play a video or play something else. So as soon as you launch this application, onCreate method is invoked. Since onCreate is the first method to be invoked, to be called on activity launch, and this is a first method of activity lifecycle. So on launch on the create method, all initialization will be done, like initializing an object, initializing a button, everything is done. You can set up on click listener on this button, you can see. So once user click on this button, on click listener method is called to handle the action. So as soon as you click listener is called, you can execute a sync task. So when you are calling execute method to perform a task in background to execute the async task, it can your UI thread also running and your all the background process also running. So as soon as you call the execute, it will invoke onPreExecute method. So this method is used to set up configuration. So it will run on, not in the background, it will run on UI thread. This is the one. So it can invoke to, for example, showing a progress bar on UI thread, not in the background. This is UI thread. So as soon as onPreExecute is finished, it invokes background. So doInBackground method is called after finishing onPreExecute method. So on doInBackground is invoked not in user UI thread, it's invoked on background thread immediately after completion of onPreExecute method. So this doInBackground method invokes publish progress. They keep on publishing the progress, the second generic type of the async. Then it invokes to the onProgressUpdate method that is also not in background on UI thread, on this is a UI thread for this examples, and this keep on updating your progress bar like this. At the same time, while your progress bar being updated, doInBackground is still computing in background. At the end of the background computation, they pass the result to the onPostExecute method. So onPostExecute method is also invoked or called on UI thread. So result is passed to the UI thread. So your background process is over, your background task is completed. Now you come to the UI thread. Fine, so that was with an example. Let us see the sample code to understand the same example. So this is a sample code, just a block code. I'm not performing any task here, just I'm trying to simulate how it happens in code wise. So you can see I have created a main activity and extending the app compact activity. So that is this is extending because this, if you extend this activity, this main activity become activity. So now on launch of this application, you can see onCreate method is called. In this onCreate method, you can see the initialization is happening like a button initializations. We have set up the action listener for the button. So we have saved the action listener. On the action listener, once we click the button on add button, they are calling execute method. So once you call execute method, they will invoke onPreExecute on UI thread not in the background. Fine. So before talking about onPreExecute, you can see I have created separate class called the background task. This background task is a subclass extending AsyncTask, and they have a three generic type. In this code, I'm not bothered about what doInBackground returning, what post execute returning, on what onProgressUpdate method is being is receiving value. I'm just putting void because this is not a proper example, this is just a sample. So as soon as you're calling the execute, it will invoke the onPreExecute on UI thread. Keep in mind on UI thread, not in the background. So on finishing of onPreExecute, it is going to invoke doInBackground method in background thread, not on UI thread. So this doInBackground thread will also invoke onProgressUpdate on UI thread, not in background. UI thread means progress bar that can keep on updating the progress bar, and still the doInBackground, this method keep on working on the computation. Once this computation is over, the result value can be returned to on post execute method. So on the post execute method is invoked on UI thread, not in the background. I repeat, on UI thread, not in a background thread. Then this will return to the UI thread, and here is a your background process is completed. So this was a sample code. Fine, we will see this sample code, extended code, in the next video while we are doing some practical of AsyncTask class. So let us talk about limitation of the AsyncTask. So what is the limitation of the async task? As I was talking about at the beginning, a sync task should ideally be used for short operation, means few seconds, not like a 1 minute, not like a 20 seconds, a few seconds. Basically, the most of the task is performed in milliseconds. So a sync task is very good for operation that can be performed within a few seconds. But in case if you need to keep the threads running for long periods of time, it is highly recommended you use the various APIs provided by java.utl.concurrent package such as executor, thread pool executor, and future task. So fine, so what is the application of a sync task? So application of sync task. In the next video, we will learn how to implement the async task to perform the task in background by using the case of add the user details in MySQL database in Android application using async task. So this is a exercise we will see practically in the next video. So here is the end of this async task explanation. So we'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.